My own parents looked me in the eyes and called me a liar. The people who were supposed to protect me chose someone else's word over mine. I walked away from everything I loved, believing I had lost my family forever. But everything changed because of one security camera that captured the truth no one wanted to hear. Stick with me while I share my story, and if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. My name is Maren Ellery, and until all of this happened, I thought my family trusted me. I was 27 years old and worked as an elementary school teacher in a small town in Oregon. I loved my job because helping children made me feel like I was doing something meaningful. After school, I often helped my parents with their family business. I never asked for money or praise. I simply believed that's what family members did for each other. My parents, Blaine and Corinne, had always expected me to be responsible. I didn't mind because I loved them. A few months before everything fell apart, my younger cousin, Veda Calloway, moved into our home after losing her apartment. My parents welcomed her with open arms. They felt sorry for her and wanted to help her get back on her feet. At first, I felt happy for her. I even helped her unpack and settle into her room. But over time, I noticed something strange. My parents started praising Veda for little things while ignoring everything I did. If she washed a few dishes, they thanked her like she had done something amazing. If I spent hours helping at the business, it was simply expected. I tried not to let it bother me. I kept telling myself it wasn't a competition. Then I began noticing small problems in the business records. Some cash amounts didn't match the daily reports. At first, I thought someone had made simple mistakes while counting, but the missing amounts slowly became larger. I quietly checked the records again because I didn't want to accuse anyone without proof. Before I could figure out what was happening, everything turned against me. One evening, Veda suddenly claimed that thousands of dollars had disappeared from the office safe. Then she looked straight at me and said I was the one who took it. I stood there completely shocked. I tried to explain that I had been checking the records because I knew something wasn't right, but no one wanted to listen. My parents believed every word Veda said without asking me a single question. That was the moment my entire life changed. I didn't argue anymore because I knew nothing I said would change their minds. I quietly went to my room and packed my clothes, a few books, and the small things that meant something to me. Every corner of that house held memories, but none of them mattered anymore. My parents stayed downstairs while I carried my boxes to my car. Neither of them came outside to stop me. I drove across town with no real plan except finding a place where I could start over. After a long day of searching, I found a tiny one-bedroom apartment that fit my budget. It wasn't comfortable, and most of the furniture was old, but at least it gave me a roof over my head. The first few nights were the hardest. The apartment felt quiet in a way that made the silence painful. I kept thinking about how quickly my life had changed. I still went to work every morning because my students depended on me. I smiled in the classroom even when I felt completely broken inside. Teaching became the only part of my day that still felt normal. Outside of work, things only became worse. People I had known for years suddenly acted differently around me. A few friends stopped returning my messages. Others canceled plans without giving a reason. I later learned that Veda had been telling everyone that I had stolen from my own family and destroyed their trust. Most people believed the story without asking for my side. I tried calling my father several times, hoping he would at least listen. Every call went unanswered. I left short voicemail messages, asking only for a chance to explain, but he never called back. My mother didn't speak to me either. Instead, she told relatives that I had betrayed the family and walked away after getting caught. Hearing that hurt more than I could describe because it wasn't true. Family members who used to welcome me suddenly treated me like a stranger. Even though I felt alone, I refused to beg anyone to believe me. I had done nothing wrong, and I wasn't going to confess to something I didn't do just to make everyone comfortable. I decided that if the truth ever came out, it would be because of facts, not because I pleaded for mercy. While I focused on surviving each day, Veda settled into my old place in the family business. She slowly took over more responsibilities and handled larger parts of the financial records. My parents trusted her completely and seemed grateful for everything she offered. From where I stood, it looked like she had replaced me in every possible way. Still, deep inside, I couldn't shake the feeling that something about the whole situation didn't make sense, and one day the truth would finally have to come out. Several weeks passed, and I slowly settled into my new routine. I focused on my students during the day and spent my evenings trying to build a peaceful life for myself. I stopped expecting anyone from my family to contact me. Then one afternoon, I received a phone call from a number I didn't recognize. I almost ignored it, but something told me to answer. The man on the other end introduced himself as Dorian Pike. I remembered him immediately. He had worked at my family's business for several years before leaving for another job. His voice sounded careful, almost nervous. He asked if we could meet somewhere private because he had something important to tell me. The next evening we met at a quiet coffee shop. Dorian looked around several times before speaking, making sure nobody he knew was nearby. He told me he had been thinking about everything that happened and couldn't stay silent anymore. A few days before I was accused, he had noticed that several financial records were missing from the office files. At first, he thought someone had simply moved them, but later he realized entire folders had disappeared. He wanted to mention it back then, but everything happened so fast after I left that he never got the chance. Hearing that immediately caught my attention because those missing records could have explained the money that disappeared. Dorian continued by saying there was something else I needed to know. The accounting office had an old security camera that most people believed had stopped working months earlier. Everyone assumed it was useless because the live screen often showed nothing but static. However, one of the technicians had once mentioned that the camera system automatically saved backup files to an external server whenever the internet connection returned after an outage. Nobody paid much attention because they thought the recordings were corrupted anyway. Dorian wasn't sure if any footage still existed, but he believed it was worth checking. My heart started beating faster. For the first time since I left home, I felt like there might actually be a way to prove my innocence. If those backups had survived, they could show what really happened inside the office before I was blamed. I asked Dorian why he had decided to come forward now. He admitted that he had watched everything from a distance and felt guilty for staying quiet. He said he always believed I was an honest person, and the story never made sense to him. Before we left, he wrote down the name of the company that had installed the security system and the location of the backup server listed in their maintenance records. As I drove home that night, I held the paper tightly in my hand. It wasn't proof yet, but it was the first real clue I had found, and for the first time in a long while, I finally felt a small sense of hope. ... After meeting Dorian, I knew I couldn't waste any time. We started looking into the old security system together. It sounded simple at first, but it quickly became much harder than we expected. The company that had installed the cameras had changed ownership, and many old records had been moved to storage. We spent days making phone calls, sending emails, and visiting offices, hoping someone could point us in the right direction. More than once, we thought we had found the answer, only to learn that another file was missing or another employee had left the company years earlier. Every small step forward seemed to lead to another dead end. There were moments when I wondered if I should give up. Even Dorian admitted that the chances of finding anything useful were getting smaller. Still, something inside me refused to quit. I had already lost too much to stop searching now. While we continued looking, Dorian stayed in touch with a few people who still worked at the business. They didn't know he was helping me, but they often shared small updates. One thing stood out. Whenever someone mentioned the missing financial records during office conversations, Veda became uncomfortable. She would quickly change the subject or tell everyone to focus on current work instead of old problems. At first, people didn't think much of it, but after hearing the same reaction several times, even Dorian found it suspicious. A person with nothing to hide usually doesn't panic when old questions come up. Nearly a month after we started searching, we finally caught a break. A retired technician who had once serviced the camera system agreed to meet us. He remembered that some backup files had been stored on a separate server that wasn't connected to the office computers. He also explained that deleting recordings from the main system didn't always remove the backup copies. With his help, we located the old server and requested access to its archived files. It took several more days before permission was approved. When we finally opened the storage folder, most of the recordings were gone. Someone had clearly tried to erase them a long time ago. Folder after folder was empty. My heart sank as I realized we might have come this far for nothing. Then Dorian noticed one file that had not been deleted. It was an overnight recording saved under an automatic backup name that nobody had noticed. We carefully copied the file onto a secure drive before doing anything else. I stared at the screen, knowing that the answers I had been searching for might be inside that single recording. My hands were shaking, but I stopped myself from pressing play. If this video contained the truth, I didn't want to watch it alone. I wanted witnesses present, so that no one could ever claim the footage had been changed or misunderstood. Whatever that recording showed would finally decide everything, : The family's attorney agreed to arrange a private meeting after Dorian explained that important evidence had been found. Everyone was asked to come to the attorney's office the following afternoon. I arrived early with Dorian and the copy of the recovered recording. A few minutes later, my parents walked into the room. They barely looked at me. Veda came in behind them, acting calm and confident. She smiled politely as if nothing could possibly go wrong. The attorney asked everyone to sit down and reminded us that nobody should interrupt until the video had finished playing. My heart was racing as the recording appeared on the screen. At first, nothing happened. The office was empty, and only the clock on the wall showed time passing. Then the front door opened. Veda quietly walked inside after business hours. She looked around to make sure no one else was there before heading straight toward the safe. The room became completely silent. She unlocked the safe, removed several bundles of cash, and placed them into her bag. After that, she pulled out confidential business files and looked through them before taking several documents with her. Nobody said a word. We all kept watching. A few moments later, Veda reached into her pocket and took out one of my old employee keycards. She carefully placed it on the floor near the safe. Then she picked up a cloth and wiped the safe handle before leaving the office. The recording ended a few seconds later. The attorney stopped the video and looked around the room. Nobody moved. My father stared at the blank screen with disbelief. My mother covered her mouth as tears filled her eyes. Neither of them could deny what they had just seen. The truth had been right in front of them all along. Veda tried to laugh nervously and said there had to be some mistake. She claimed the recording had been edited, but the technician's report attached to the backup confirmed that the file had never been changed. The attorney explained that the recording included a secure timestamp from the original system, making it extremely difficult to fake. Veda's face turned pale as she realized nobody believed her anymore. She looked around the room, hoping someone would defend her, but no one spoke. My father finally turned toward me, but he couldn't find the words. For the first time since all this began, he knew I had been telling the truth. Every accusation made against me had fallen apart in just a few minutes. I didn't feel happy watching my family break down. I only felt relief. The weight I had been carrying for so long was finally gone. My name had been cleared, not because someone chose to trust me, but because the truth had spoken for itself, leaving no room for doubt. : The meeting ended very differently from how anyone expected. After seeing the recording, the attorney asked everyone to remain seated because there were still several questions that needed answers. He began comparing the recovered video with the financial records that were still available. The more documents he examined, the more concerned he became. He pointed out transactions that had no proper explanation and withdrawals that had never been approved. Each new detail made it clear that the missing money was not the result of one single event. It had been happening over a longer period of time. Veda quickly tried to defend herself. She claimed she had only borrowed the money because she planned to pay it back later. She insisted she never wanted to hurt anyone and said she had been under stress after losing her apartment. Her explanation did not match the documents or the recording. The attorney calmly reminded her that borrowing company money without permission and hiding business records were serious actions. The facts simply did not support her story. My parents sat quietly through the entire discussion. They looked completely different from the confident people who had once refused to hear my side. My father kept staring at the table while my mother wiped away tears. They finally understood that they had judged me without asking for the truth. They had trusted an accusation instead of their own daughter. Neither of them tried to make excuses for what they had done. They knew the damage could not be erased with a simple apology. The attorney recommended reporting everything to the proper authorities because the evidence suggested possible financial crimes. Within days, investigators contacted everyone involved. They requested copies of business records, bank statements, and the security footage. Dorian also gave a statement about the missing files he had noticed before I was accused. As the investigation continued, more problems were uncovered. Several payments had been redirected into accounts connected to Veda. There were also false entries in the bookkeeping that hid the missing money. Those discoveries placed the family business under serious financial pressure. Some accounts were temporarily frozen while officials reviewed the records. Important business decisions had to be delayed until the investigation was complete. Longtime clients began asking questions after hearing that the company was being examined. Employees worried about their jobs because nobody knew what would happen next. Watching everything unfold was painful because I had once cared deeply about that business. Even though I had been proven innocent, I knew my family would now have to face the consequences of choices they had never expected. The truth had finally come out, but it came with a price that affected everyone. Nothing could return life to the way it had been before, and every person in that family now had to live with the results of the decisions they had made. Not long after the investigation began, my parents started reaching out to me almost every day. They left voicemail messages, sent letters, and even came to my apartment hoping I would meet them. They wanted me to return to the family business and help fix everything that had gone wrong. They said the company needed someone honest, someone they could finally trust again. I listened to what they had to say, but my answer never changed. I politely told them no. Going back would not erase what had happened, and it would not heal the pain I had carried for so long. I had spent enough time trying to earn trust that should have been given to me from the beginning. This time I chose myself. Instead of looking backward, I decided to focus on building something new. During one of our conversations, Dorian mentioned that many schools and small communities struggled to organize reading programs because they lacked planning and support. The idea stayed with me. As a teacher, I had seen the same problem myself. We realized we could combine our skills and create a small educational consulting business. My classroom experience and Dorian's knowledge of organization and business management worked well together. We spent weeks creating lesson resources, reading plans, and community projects that encouraged children and families to enjoy books together. At first, we only worked with one local school district. The program received positive feedback from teachers, parents, and students. Soon another district contacted us, asking for the same help. Little by little, our business grew. We hired a few part-time educators and expanded our services into nearby towns. Watching children become excited about reading reminded me why I had chosen education in the first place. For the first time in a long while, I felt completely in control of my own future. I wasn't trying to prove anything to anyone anymore. I was simply doing work that mattered to me. News of our success slowly spread through the community. People who had once believed the rumors began seeing me in a different light. They no longer looked at me as the woman who had been accused. They saw someone who had worked hard and built something meaningful from nothing. My parents also heard about the company's success. They congratulated me several times and repeated that there would always be a place for me in the family business if I changed my mind. I thanked them for their kind words, but I never accepted the offer. My greatest revenge was not watching someone else fail. It was living a peaceful life that no longer depended on the approval of people who had once turned their backs on me. Every new achievement reminded me that I had found my own path, and I had reached it without returning to the place where my trust had been broken, ... As the months passed, life became calmer, but some things were still difficult to face. My parents did not stop trying to repair the relationship they had broken. They asked if we could have dinner together, meet for coffee, or simply talk for a few minutes. This time, they were honest about their mistakes. They admitted they had believed the easiest story instead of taking the time to hear the truth. My father quietly told me that he had failed as a parent because he chose quick judgment over trust. My mother said she still thought about the day I left the house and wished she had stopped me before it was too late. Hearing those words was emotional, but they did not erase the past. Trust does not return the moment someone says they are sorry. It takes time, and sometimes the damage runs too deep. Around the same time, our extended family began gathering again for birthdays and holidays. The first few events were uncomfortable for everyone. Relatives who had once avoided me suddenly wanted to talk. Some admitted they had believed the rumors without asking what really happened. Others simply looked embarrassed whenever they saw me. One aunt quietly apologized for repeating stories that she never checked. An uncle admitted he should have called me before making up his mind. Their words were sincere, but each apology reminded me of how alone I had felt when nobody wanted to hear my side. I realized that people often find it easier to believe gossip than to search for the truth. That lesson stayed with me. During one family dinner, the conversation became silent when someone mentioned everything that had happened. Nobody knew what to say. My father finally stood up and told everyone that I had deserved their trust from the beginning. He accepted responsibility for the choices he had made and asked the family to learn from his mistake. The room remained quiet because everyone knew he was right. After dinner, my mother asked if I could ever forgive them. I answered honestly. I told her I was trying, but forgiveness was much harder than people imagined. Forgetting was impossible because the memories were still there. Every time I remembered standing alone with nowhere to go, I felt the same pain all over again. Even so, I did not want to spend the rest of my life filled with anger. I believed people could change if they truly accepted responsibility for their actions. I was willing to take small steps, but I could not pretend everything was normal again. My parents understood that rebuilding our relationship would take patience. They had lost my trust in a single moment, and they now realized it would take much longer to earn even a small part of it back. That became the hardest lesson our family had ever faced. Several months later, the legal process involving the family business finally reached its last stage. Everyone who needed to be there was asked to attend the final settlement meeting. The atmosphere was quiet from the moment we entered the room. There were lawyers, financial advisors, and a few family members sitting around the table. This meeting was meant to settle the remaining business matters and allow everyone to move forward. I wasn't there to argue or demand anything. I simply wanted everything to end the right way. After the legal papers were reviewed, the conversation turned personal. My father looked at me and asked if there was anything I wanted to say before the meeting ended. I took a deep breath because I knew this might be the last time we all sat together like this. I spoke calmly, without raising my voice or blaming anyone. I told them that losing my place in the family business had never been the hardest part. Money could be earned again, and jobs could be replaced. What hurt the most was realizing that the people I trusted the most never trusted me when it mattered. I explained that strangers are free to believe whatever they want because they do not truly know you. But family is different. Family is supposed to stand beside you when everyone else turns away. When that support disappears, something inside you changes forever. I said I had spent many nights wondering why nobody had asked me one simple question before making such a life-changing decision. That silence stayed with me longer than the accusation itself. My mother began crying quietly as she listened. My father lowered his head and admitted there was nothing he could say to change what had happened. He said he finally understood that proving my innocence did not erase the pain I had already lived through. The truth had cleared my name, but it could never give me back the peace I lost during those months. I appreciated that he understood, even if it came much later than it should have. I also told them that I did not hate them. Holding on to hate would only continue hurting me. But healing did not mean pretending nothing had happened. Some memories become part of a person, and they remain there no matter how much time passes. The room stayed silent after I finished speaking. Nobody tried to argue because there was nothing left to defend. Everyone understood that the deepest damage had never been about money or business. It had been about trust. When the meeting ended, we all signed the final papers and quietly walked out of the building. As I stepped outside, I felt lighter than I had in a long time. The past could not be changed, but I had finally said everything that had been in my heart, and that gave me a sense of peace I had been searching for since the day my life fell apart. Life slowly moved forward after everything was finally settled. I no longer woke up wondering if people believed the lies that had once followed me everywhere. My name had been cleared, and that gave me a sense of freedom that I had not felt in a long time. I continued growing the educational consulting company with Dorian, and each year we were able to help more schools and more children. Watching students discover a love for reading became one of the greatest rewards of my life. It reminded me that good things can grow even after painful experiences. I focused my energy on the future instead of the past. As for Veda, she had to face the legal results of the choices she made. The investigation ended with enough evidence to hold her responsible for her actions. She was required to answer for the financial damage she had caused, and her reputation was permanently changed. The same dishonesty she used against others eventually caught up with her. I did not celebrate what happened to her because revenge had never been my real goal. The truth had already done everything that needed to be done. My parents continued trying to rebuild our relationship over the years. They stayed involved in my life by remembering birthdays, attending important events, and asking how my work was going. Their efforts were sincere, and I could see they truly regretted the decisions they had made. Our relationship slowly became respectful again, but it was never exactly the same as it had once been. Some parts of the past could not be repaired completely, no matter how much everyone wished they could. We learned to accept that reality instead of pretending everything had returned to normal. Looking back, I realized I had spent so much of my life trying to earn love and approval from other people. Losing everything taught me the value of believing in myself, even when nobody else did. I discovered that self-respect is stronger than public opinion, and that real confidence comes from knowing your own character. If I had given up when everyone turned against me, I would never have found the life I have now. The hardest chapter of my life became the reason I grew into a stronger person. Today, when I look in the mirror, I don't see someone who was falsely accused. I see someone who refused to let injustice define her future. My story did not end with revenge. It ended with justice, healing, and a fresh beginning built through honesty, patience, and hard work. If there is one lesson I hope people remember from my experience, it is this: the truth may take time to appear, but it has a way of finding the light. And when it finally does, no lie is strong enough to stand in its way.